Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to add my welcome to that of the Chair. Thank you for turning out in such large numbers this morning. As they say in church, there's still a few spaces in the front queues if anybody at the back would like to come up. As the Chair has indicated, I will talk about AFBI's strategy, and we refer to it as our 2020 strategy. The Chair has also referred to the severe pressures on the public finances at the moment, and I'll touch on that as they affect AFBI, because we all know those are widespread throughout the public sector in Northern Ireland and have had a major influence on the shaping of our strategy. But first of all, for those of you who are not very familiar with AFBI, I'd like to describe the organisation in general terms. We're a non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. We're governed by a non-executive board. We currently have 764 staff across a wide range of scientific and administrative disciplines. We're based at 7 locations in Northern Ireland. The Veterinary Sciences Division headquarters is Stormont, this Hillsborough site, a veterinary laboratory at Oma, a plant research station at Lochgall, a plant research station across McCreevy, our headquarters at Newforge Lane, and we have a small facility up in Bush Mills that carries out research on salmon, wild salmon. And finally, we have our mobile platform, the research vessel Christie's, which carries out fish stock assessment and other work on the Irish Sea. Why are we here? We're basically here to deliver the assigned work programme for the Department of Agriculture in Northern Ireland. We're also here to maintain emergency response capability, and we only have to think of dioxins, foot and mouth disease, blue tongue, to see how important, critically indeed it is to the local industry to have a local, rapid, effective emergency response capability. And in AFBI we maintain that capability by participation in R&D. That's absolutely essential for keeping our knives sharpened and our staff at a high level of training. And of course, our ultimate role is here to provide a service to the Northern Ireland Agri-Food industry, which indeed is the largest sector of our local economy, and also to help grow the wider economy. Turning to our strategy for 2020, there are indeed severe pressures on the Northern Ireland public finances. We only have to listen to the media, and we will be reminded of that every single day. The Department of Agriculture is not immune to those cuts, and it has faced major reductions to its budget. That means in turn that the Department's ability to provide grant and aid to AFBI has been reduced quite substantially. AFBI and DARD have been working closely over the last year to 18 months to prioritise elements of the work programme that AFBI carries out for the Department. We realise that there is no option but to reduce the number of areas in which AFBI is currently active, to refocus on our areas of strength. And indeed, the slogan that we have applied, and I think it's a very appropriate slogan, is shrink to grow. We fully appreciate that AFBI as an institute must reduce in size quite dramatically in order to live within the financial envelope that is available. But then our intention is to grow from those positions of strength, those areas of strength, bringing in our stakeholders in industry and government as much as possible to ensure that that growth takes place. In terms of some of the detail, and really just to illustrate the extent of the financial pressures on the Institute, because of the reductions in the Department's budget, the grant and aid that it awards to AFBI for carrying out the assigned work programme has reduced substantially. And in fact, this year compared to last year, grant and aid is reduced by approximately £6 million. On top of that, AFBI has to cover the costs of normal pay progression increases for its staff. Our staff, essentially, while they're not civil servants, have civil service terms and conditions, so the pay scales of the civil service apply. There's a huge cost to that, approximately £2 million per year. When we add on general inflation of about £500,000 a year, we can see that that £6 million reduction in grant and aid rapidly becomes 7 or 8 million. In response to the budget pressures, we have been reducing our staff numbers. And for example, in 2013, we had 836 staff. That has gradually reduced to a current level of 764. But in order to live within our budget this year, we unfortunately, like many parts of the public sector, have had to partake of the voluntary exit scheme for staff. And at the moment we are planning for the exiting of, this is on a voluntary basis, of 129 staff later this year. This is all dependent on Northern Ireland Executive approval for the funding for this to take place. That will represent a reduction of just over 180 staff compared to last year, or a 24% reduction overall in the Institute. So it's quite obvious that the scientific capacity of AFBI going forward will be much significantly reduced. I refer to us shrinking to grow, and the scientific pillars that we have identified for growth in the future still cover a wide span of activities. And these areas have been selected based on priority to government policy objectives, their criticality to maintain our ability to protect the emergency response capability required for the industry, areas that are strategically important to AFBI, areas in which we're scientifically good, where we have internationally recognised and valued science, where we have a critical mass of staff, because the days when scientific research can be done with a small number of staff in isolation are long since gone. The name of the game in scientific research nowadays is collaboration. All the easy problems have been solved. We're now into the difficult solutions. And of course, external funding opportunities, which are hugely important for maintenance of capacity within the Institute. And I've listed the areas that we will continue to, and the areas in which we hope to grow over the next number of years in AFBI. And they still cover quite a wide span of activity. Unfortunately, none of us like it, but we've had to make big decisions about some of the future areas in which AFBI is active. One of those areas was the Oma Veterinary Laboratory. AFBI submitted a number of proposals to the department earlier this year. The DARD Minister has considered those proposals, and as part of that process, she has decided that the Oma Laboratory was so important to the industry that it should remain open. However, we are going to centralise some of the backroom testing to Stormont. DARD heavily subsidises the cost of animal disease testing in Northern Ireland, and that subsidy is going to be reviewed each year going forward. And obviously the idea is to try and encourage the industry to provide more funding towards that service. Natural reductions, now that we are in the throes or the final throes of brucellosis, there hasn't been a case since February 2012, and the department has applied for official brucellosis freedom status to Europe. So there's already is a natural reduction in the amount of brucellosis testing going forward, and that is of benefit to farmers, and it's also a benefit to AFBI in terms of reducing costs. A risk approach has been applied to veterinary drug residues testing, and the volume of that statutory testing is also decreasing in line with requirements. Probably one of the areas that has received most publicity is the future of AFBI's Cross McCreevy site. This site carries out a number of plant science functions, including arable research. Unfortunately, again, in terms of cutting our cloth, the department will withdraw funding from the DARD, from the cereals research that goes on at that site, and also from the recommended herbage variety lists. However, there is the option of AFBI engaging with the industry to consider other ways, maybe more cost-effective and even more generally effective ways in which the recommended list work could be carried out, such as more on-farm work. The department is also wishes to support the industry in receiving the results of research programs on cereals carried out elsewhere, so that the industry is not denied the value of that research. It's been decided that the UK national list trial work and the official seed testing work currently carried out at Crossna-Creevy will continue, but that AFBI will look at relocating that work to either its Hillsborough or Loughgall site. We will also engage with the industry to maximise the cost recovery for the official seed testing function. DUS work is work we carry out for plant breeders. It's currently carried out on a full cost recovery basis from those breeders, but again, that will be relocated to Loughgall or Hillsborough, and we will discuss with the industry how best to take that forward. The net impact of all of that is that AFBI will no longer have a requirement for the Crossna-Creevy site. Closure of the site wouldn't occur until 4 years, when all the current contracts have been honoured and completed. Turning to AFBI's Loughgall site, the department has decided that commercial potato breeding and strategic potato breeding are lesser priorities. It is withdrawing the funding for the commercial potato breeding work and will review the strategic potato breeding work carried out at Loughgall. Also of lesser priority is the renewable energy and biomass research, mainly carried out at Loughgall, but with some at this particular site in Hillsborough. The department has deferred a decision on the future of funding for mushroom and top fruit research. AFBI is currently engaged in discussions with Teagasc, our counterpart in the Republic of Ireland, to investigate the possibility of Loughgall becoming the site for an all-Ireland apple and mushroom research facility. And this is basically because, in common with other research institutes, it's very difficult to maintain research within very small sectors, essentially. So the whole idea is to try and pool resources. And we'll also be engaging with a number of research organisations in Great Britain to see if we can leverage in funding for that work at Loughgall as well. DARD and AFBI will also review the extent or the scale of the current potato health programme work which is carried out at Loughgall. Carried out at Newforge. This morning we're at our Hillsborough site, which is a very important experimental research facility for sustainable agriculture. The department, as I mentioned, will be withdrawing funding for renewable energy work, and some of that work is carried out in the Environment and Renewable Energy Centre at this site. However, funding for the major programmes of ruminant and pig research carried out at Hillsborough will continue. More generally, AFBI will develop an action plan on growing its income, and I'll say more about that later. And this is the income we receive outside grant aid, which is currently just over 30% of our total funding. We'll also review the organisational structure within AFBI, covering all our divisions and branches and the necessary staffing. And as well as that, review the terms and conditions that staff have. As I said earlier, our staff have Northern Ireland Civil Service terms and conditions. There are many arguments, good arguments, as to why those conditions are not appropriate for an organisation such as AFBI, which, while it's public sector, is growing its commercial side. We'll also be working closely with CAFRE, with whom we have a very good and effective working relationship at present, to see how we can make that relationship work even better in terms of sharing farm facilities. And one example of that is a relocation of AFBI's food science work, or some of it, which is currently carried out at Newforge Lane, to CAFRE's Lochry campus. And the whole idea there is to provide that food science function alongside CAFRE's food technology and education function, so that it becomes a one-stop shop really for the industry for food research and technology in Northern Ireland. I've got through the bad news in terms of cuts, but I think it's extremely important that we do emphasise that AFBI is not closing down. We will still be active in a broad range of activities, those areas in which we are very strong. There are a number of opportunities, very important opportunities for the Institute at the moment. One of those is the Darg Minister's very strong support for large-scale investment in the AFBI. And in fact, our current plans are probably the most ambitious capital investment plans ever undertaken by the department. The department owns the estate that AFBI occupies. We lease it from the department. Some of the big areas are, our headquarters are currently based at Newforge Lane in Belfast. They're quite expensive to run and maintain because they were built for the School of Agriculture and Food Science, as well as Darg Science Service. AFBI inherited that site from the Science Service, and it's really too large for our needs. So the plan is that we move to a new, smaller, state-of-the-art facility, most likely at the moment to be based at this site at Hillsborough. As part of that, we also need to consider the future of our grassland and plant science work. And one of the decisions to be made is whether or not that work would also relocate to the new headquarters, potentially at Hillsborough, or whether a new dedicated site would be built, or accommodation building would be built on the Loughgall site. There are also plans to improve the standard of the farm animal accommodation on this particular site. Some of our facilities, particularly our beef facilities, are quite dated and no longer cost effective to actually run. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. In terms of other initiatives, the department is currently considering an AFBI-directed research fund, and this will be very important to the Institute. Currently, the department commissions individual R&D projects and actually has the discretion to approve or not those projects. One of the issues or constraints we come across in AFBI is that if we are to bid for other sources of funding, we do not have the freedom to actually make those decisions. So this AFBI-directed research fund would essentially be carving out some of our existing grant and aid, really to allow AFBI flexibility to respond to research calls, whether they're from Europe or any other funding organisation, to try and leverage in that additional funding with the whole idea of adding value to the department's core R&D funding. In terms of a change in UK government treatment of finance, and particularly the issue of capital versus resource, what is going to happen next year is that there will be a change in treatment of the expenditure on R&D. Currently it's classified as resource expenditure, but from next April it will become capital expenditure. The advantage or potential advantage for AFBI in that is that that capital could become ring-fenced. So would be more secure. No funding is ever secure, but would be more secure than remaining as resource. There are quite a number of external funding opportunities for AFBI. Many of you will be aware of the European Union's Horizon 2020 programme, which has over £3 billion available for R&D in Europe, in Agri-Food and Marine. The department has funded a Northern Ireland contact person for Agri-Food, and that person is based in AFBI. Dr. Elaine Groom, who's with us this morning. And Elaine, while she's based in AFBI, is not just working for AFBI, she's working for NI plc in support of the executive's aims of drawing down more European funding. Currently, AFBI has 6 bids into Europe for funding totaling approximately over €1 million. It's important to remember that Horizon 2020 applications, the process is extremely competitive, and in the first round of calls, which opened last year, the success rate is about 12% right across Europe. AFBI traditionally has actually been above the Northern Ireland average in the previous frameworks and also in the recent calls, and we hope to improve our average quite dramatically.